And welcome back, everyone, to another episode of Bushwackers Breakdown. And today we take a look at episode 8, The Right to Bear Arms. And real quickly, just remember to like, comment, subscribe. It doesn't take long. Just click that little button down below. Stay up to date on all the latest content that's coming out. I will be releasing a few new series over the next few months, and season 2 will premiere sometime around late spring, early summer. So if you really enjoyed the content, smash that like button, comment below, help a brother out, and yeah, let's dive right in. Alright, so brief synopsis. So basically it starts off with a couple in the woods, and they are attacked by a bear, but we don't really see who the bear is. We just see the outline of a bear attack and kill these people. The following day, the forest ranger and the police are scouring the crime scene, and they're a bit confused as to what's going on here. The police are a bit dismissive because they just see it as another random bear attack. It's tragic, but they don't really see much of what they can do on their end. The park ranger gets a notification and decides to call in the bushwhackers, and the terrible trio investigate the crime scene, where Luca notices that the cut marks are a bit too clean, as if they were made by a knife. So they decide to spend the night in the campgrounds to stake out and see who is behind the attacks and possibly capture the culprit. As Lee is telling the story, he begins to cough and gag because Luca is smoking a bandito, and after dry heaving and not being able to breathe because of the noxious fumes from the cigarillo, they go to bed. Later on, the bear arrives, and JJ, seeing the shadow, opens fire, and they are surprised to see it is a furry. At first, the furry refuses to tell them anything, but they soon learn that the furry's mission is to purge all the natural parks in North Carolina of campers and return it to its pristine, primordial beauty. And soon, the bushwhackers come face to face with the cult of the bear, where they are tied up to trees and are charged with a litany of crimes for basically being at the park. They're basically being, sentenced to death for camping. However, they notice that Lee is not with them, and they discover that Lee has been converted to the bear cause. And to prove his loyalty, Lee lights the fire to burn the trees, and Luca and JJ crash into the lake, where they escape, and they plan their next attack. The following day, the bears are walking around the forest to ensure that they do not find any campers, and they discover fish and bottles of honey tied from tree branches. As they climb up to grab the goodies, the branches snap and they fall into some traps, i.e. holes dug into the ground with stakes. The leader of the cult is horrified to see that his leg has been impaled, and Lee is equally horrified because the pit is basically a giant latrine, and he again is horrified to learn that he is covered in human shit. The park ranger is ecstatic to see that the culprits have been caught, and as they leave, Lee curses the situation that he's in. So that pretty much just summarizes the story. So where did that idea come from? Well, this is a pretty interesting story. A few years ago, I was watching TV on my computer. I had YouTube TV at the time, and it was Halloween, and there was I think it was like a Doritos commercial where this guy he catches this girl and she's dressed up in a bear costume, and he says, "Hey lady, what are you doing here?" And she's like, "I'm not a lady, I'm a bear."
Can I help you?
Yeah, I'm hungry. Can you open this lid? It's tough with these.
Mind if I sit with you?
I don't care. I'm a bear.
And after a few minutes, he's like, "Oh, never mind. Yep, you are a bear." And that kind of and that right away just they just set off a light bulb in my head, and I thought, this would be a pretty interesting story to basically just have a bunch of furries who genuinely believe they're bears going on a rampage and basically killing anybody who's imposing on their stomping ground. So that pretty much laid the foundation for the right to bear arms. The other thing that kind of added to it was the fact that they not only were they a cult, but they saw themselves as part of a religious movement. They worshipped the great bear in the sky. So I thought that was an added measure of of silliness, so to speak. What I thought was really interesting was the fact that this is this was the second Bushwackers episode that's technically a murder mystery, because the Bushwackers are called in to investigate a series of murders at the Uwharrie National Park, and for my mind, I think it's one of the best mystery stories I've ever written. In fact, it's one of my top 5 out of season 1. But for me, it kind of takes the Bushwackers in a different angle because before they've had to deal with all these monsters, they've had to deal with all these creatures and killer watermelons, and really this is the first episode where they're dealing with human villains. I guess you could say human villains because they're a bunch of self-deluded people wearing bear costumes and running around and just acting all Jack the Ripper and shit. In that regards, it's the first episode that deals with human villains instead of monsters or gods or whatever. The second thing is that this is the first episode that Lee voices himself. So previously it was just me voicing everybody, but now Lee is actually stepping in and actually getting into voice acting, and I think it's done a phenomenal job. I mean, what would typically happen is, usually on a Tuesday, I would email a script to him, and usually by Friday or Saturday, he would, he would respond with the audio clip, and he usually does 2 takes. And typically, I'll go through, find the best take, and then insert it into the line of dialogue, and that's how I pretty much edit the episode. And honestly, I think he's done a phenomenal job. I mean, I wouldn't say he's up there with Stephen Bloom or Tara Strong, but I think he's pretty good, all things considered. So yeah, I mean, this is the first episode where Lee Soucek is actually voiced by Lee Soucek. I tried to get John to voice himself, but I've yet to get a commitment from him. So fingers crossed. I'm still trying to make that happen. And I'm also looking to get more and more people involved in doing different voices, because really it can be a bit, I wouldn't say stressful, but it can be a bit difficult sometimes to try to do all the voices yourself. So there's that. So the setting in the Uwharrie parks, for me, this is the first episode that's, again, this is the first episode where it's set in a national park here in North Carolina. And I've never been to the Uwharrie mountains, but but I've read about it and I've seen the pictures, and it's always fascinated me. It kind of captured my imagination, because I just thought, wow, because I always thought if you wanted to go to the mountains, you always had to go west, near the Tennessee border. But I only found out recently that that there was a mountain range in central North Carolina. Because in elementary school, when I had to take North Carolina history, we were always taught that North Carolina is divided into 3 parts: the mountains, the Piedmont, and the coastal plains. And I've been to Western North Carolina. I've been to Grandfather Mountain. It's really, really high and really, really majestic. I think it's phenomenal. I live in Charlotte, so it's pretty much the hill country. And I've driven to Greenville on several occasions, so it's pretty flat. Oddly enough, it's full of soybean farms. But to think that there's a mountain range like smack dab in the middle of North Carolina, I thought, wow, that's just fascinating. And I decided, you know what? If there was any story that I was going to set in the Juarez, it would have to be this episode. And I think overall it came together quite well. I think the story, the setting, the artwork, I think I did a pretty good job with that. I mean, I don't want to toot my own horn, but I thought the colors and the imagery was just so vivid. And I thought, if there's any episode that defines the Bushwhackers, or any handful of episodes that would define the Bushwhackers, I should say, it would be, this would be one of them. And again, like I said, this is one of my top 5 favorite episodes of season 1. So I do want to talk about the cover for a bit. This one was actually inspired by a music video that George Harrison made back in the 80s. I got my mind set on you, and he's basically sitting in a study playing as all of the knickknacks in the study just come to life and start dancing.
I got my mind set on you.
And I thought, you know what, I definitely do want to do a cover art that that pays homage to that music video, because that's one of the few music videos that I vividly remember from my childhood. And furthermore, just the way that everything's been set up. You got Lee. He's basically acting like a rug. JJ's head's been mounted like a trophy, and then I'm standing in the corner like a taxidermied animal. I just think it's so ridiculous, and in a rather macabre way, it kind of lets you know that these furries aren't really right in the head, and they're willing to resort to murder, basically, to accomplish their goals. So it's a gruesome cover because it kind of gives you a heads up and lets you know, hey, these furries are fanatical, they'll do anything. But at the same time, it's a work of art, I think, and it pays homage to a music video that I remember so vividly from my childhood. And actually this is actually one of the handful of cover art that actually required a lot of patience and time and skill, because I mean, it took a lot for me to figure out how I was going to do the coloring and everything. But as usual, everything just fell into place, and I'm pretty happy with that. So that's my breakdown for The Right to Bear Arms. If you have any thoughts of your own, feel free to let me know in the comments below. And remember to like, comment, subscribe, and have a great day. Bye.